I'd like to invite the leaders panel to come onto the stage now so as to make the most efficient use of time. I think 2 more chairs are going to follow them. I hope that's the case. Thomas, you managed to make economics sound quite sexy, if I may say so. I thought you were going to undo another button of your shirt when you were telling us that the data was trending rather nicely. But this is the leaders panel now, and they are true leaders and people we're very excited to hear from. I won't give you their names now. I'll leave that to the person who is chairing the leaders panel. That is Robin Shepherd, who's making his way to the stage now. So Robin will introduce his panel. And Robin Shepherd, known to, I'm sure, most people here, 50 years in the hotel industry, president of Bespoke Hotels, and as Harry Murray mentioned earlier on today, you weren't here, Robin, to hear Harry's golden words about you, but he was very polite about your Blue Badge Access Awards that you created. So Robin is a bit of a hero of ours, I think. Welcome to you, sir, and you are going to introduce the panel. So welcome to you all. I'll leave it in your capable hands, our leaders panel. Let's give them a round of applause now they're here.
This is where the misery index starts to move. I had a little...
Are you mic'd up?
I don't know.
I don't think Robin is mic'd up. Thank you. You better use that.
Okay. Is that all right? How's that working? Is that okay? Well, good morning, everybody. This is where the misery index changes. I had a little misery moment myself not long ago when Suella Braverman was fired. Gave me a sense of enormous good cheer and happiness. Kate, of course, can't comment upon that sort of thing because you're supposed to be neutral. It gives me great pleasure to introduce 4 of our panelists today who are assembled here to talk about a very mixed and varied set of questions. To my immediate left is Kate Nichols, and I'm going to invite Kate just to tell you a fraction about her title and present role, if I may.
I'm Chief Executive at UK Hospitality, which is the national trade body that represents the breadth of hospitality businesses, everything from a single-site independent hotel, pub, bar, restaurant, guest house, coffee shop, cafe, right the way through to all the national chains. We have 750 member companies. They operate 150,000 outlets across the UK, and it's roughly 95% of the market. And my role is to be the voice and face of that industry and the people working in it to government, whether that's at national, local, or devolved administration level.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kate. Susan Bland, may I ask you just to tell us a fraction about you?
Certainly. Hi, I'm Susan Bland. I'm the Managing Director of RBH Hospitality. We are a third-party hotel management company. We have 54 hotels across the UK that we manage on behalf of their owners. We are brand agnostic and have about 20 IHG, half a dozen Hilton, Marriott, Accor, Wyndham, and a number of unbranded properties too.
Thank you so much. And next, if I could just ask Joanne Taylor-Stagg to introduce herself, I'd be very grateful.
Certainly. Joanne, and I am the General Manager of the Athenaeum Hotel and Residence in Mayfair, so a very short journey for me this morning.
And last but by no means least, Andrew Henning, who's come a mighty distance from...
Park Lane. Got here on time. Good morning. My name is Andrew Henning. I'm the General Manager of Grosvenor House Suites on Park Lane and also the MD for Highgate Hotels for London.
Okay, so that's your panel. The questions are a mixture of those questions that the panelists would like to talk about themselves, but also a number of people written in saying, please can we get some opinion on the following. So I'm going to throw the first curveball at Kate, if I may.
Okay.
Could you please talk us laymen and laywomen through the looming rates crisis and explain what you mean by the indexation dilemma?
Okay, so this is to do with business rates, and although you have your rateable value revaluation for the property and you get your rates bill at the start of a 3-year period, it's subject to indexation. And that hasn't really been an issue that we've been worried about for about 4 or 5 years, but suddenly inflation bites. And the reason that we haven't been terribly worried is inflation has been very low pre-COVID. And then nobody in the sector, thanks to the work that we've been doing with the government, has paid full rates bills for 4 years. But this is the first time that we are likely to be seeing full rates bills come through. So unless the Chancellor takes action in the autumn statement, everybody's bill will rise by September's inflation figures. So that's a 7% increase in all bills that we're paying. And we'll see an end to the hospitality reliefs, which are currently 75% rate relief up to a maximum benefit of about £120,000 per premises. So even if that isn't your full bill that you're getting and your full 75% discount, every company in the hospitality sector gets that benefit from the Chancellor. So that's the indexation crisis. And I think people have woken up to that quite late in the day because it hasn't been happening for the last 5 years. And of course, inflation is quite high. So that's why we've been putting all our efforts into this autumn statement in pushing the Chancellor to take action on that key decision. Don't use September's inflation figures. Ideally, freeze the multiplier, which is what Rishi Sunak has done since 2019. But don't use September's figures to increase the bills. Otherwise, we will see 67% say they will cut investment, 50% say they will cut hours and jobs, and 25% of businesses in hospitality say they will close if those changes go ahead. So devastating impact, really need to have the Chancellor focused on action.
It's obvious, isn't it? Really? Why would you not want to do that?
It is obvious. Why would you not want to do that? In our sector alone, it would be about £1 billion cost. The indexation would not just apply to our sector, however, it applies across the economy, so every single business would also have their bills. And when you've got that kind of austerity measures that are going through at a local authority level, the government has to offset the cost reduction that the local authorities would face. And last year in January, when he did the same thing, it was the single biggest benefit that he gave to business in the January statement. The cost was about £8 billion to the Exchequer. So we have to be aware that it does come at a price, but it would be an obvious thing to do.
Okay, thank you. Well, we may come back to that presently, but I'd like to ask Joanne if she wouldn't mind just sharing what her understanding is of ESG, and particularly in terms of sustainability and how that impacts your present business.
Absolutely. I think ESG is absolutely critical, not only for the obvious things that we see every day in terms of weather and the impact that it will have for all of us, but I think it's business critical for our guests, and there's growing data that suggests that more and more people are prepared to pay an elevated price to stay in a sustainable hotel. How much and how many depends on what data, but ultimately every single report seems to suggest that more people will pay more for a green hotel. It's important to our talent, and more often than not, we're getting questions from the people that we're interviewing asking what we're doing from a green perspective. But looking around the room, there's a lot of finance people in here, so let's talk about how good it is for business. And the impact that you can have on your bottom line by really focusing in on ESG is actually quite profound. I always thought that ESG would be a cost to the business. It absolutely doesn't have to be. We employed an ESG manager, and his number one objective was make savings that are comparable with the cost of your salary in year one. And he's on track to do that. So my two top tips, I guess, if I was looking to make savings, unfortunately, maybe this is where the misery comes back in because they're not exciting subjects, but it's waste. So my hotel, our large bins, we pay £12.42 for a bin of general waste. You pay a third less if it's dry mix recycling, and it's half if it's glass. Now, I don't know about you, but we get through quite a lot of rubbish. And so by focusing and educating the team and making bins accessible and easy, we've targeting a 20% reduction in our waste bills just by moving things from general waste into dry mix recycling or into glass. Really simple, but actually quite a big saving to be made. And then the other is around greenhouse gases, particularly scope 1 and 2, which really is energy. And energy, I think, if you focus on it and you educate, and if you've got some great technological kit out there, and there certainly is, you can bring that down. So in 2020, we were producing about 58 kilos of carbon per guest night. Over 3 years, we've got that down. We're projecting about 30 kilos. Now, we spend £1 million on energy. You do the maths. It's good for business, it's good for the planet, and it's good for our people.
And from now on, will be known as ESAG, which stands for Environment, Sustainability, Access and Governance, because access is far too far down the current agenda. But that's my little commercial plug. Thank you, Joanne. Susan, can we talk about revenue managers and their unerring rise in the business? Would you mind just giving us some insights into the importance?
Sure. I think the role of the revenue manager has always been critical. It's always been quite central in the management of our commercial functions. But I do think it has increased in prominence over the past number of years. They're a bit of a unique breed, and I'm sure there are some in the room. Quite hard to find and really hard to retain. And certainly the cost of hiring a revenue manager has gone up and up and up. We've looked at what does a revenue manager do numerous times within RBH, and how many hotels can you manage, and how many cross brands can you do, and things. And the role has become more and more complex. So I think the role of AI in revenue management has become more and more at the forefront of what the role can achieve. AI has always been there as part of revenue management systems. It's been around for 20 plus years, but we've never really trusted it. And we've always, the industry has always been, but I need a person to do it, I need a human. And I think that's really the biggest change in revenue management over recent years, and continuing to be into the future years, is that the world of AI can analyze the same as a human, but it can analyze all of the data points like that, and that's what a human can't do. A human takes the time to get through and analyze and might make the same decision, but will take a lot longer. And I think that the change in revenue management has to be to trust the world of AI, which is something that we've never really managed to do, but is something that is pushing more and more forwards. It doesn't get rid of jobs. It will help, and I think that it will enable the role of the revenue manager to actually analyze what is coming out of the AI and be able to make more informed decisions and trust that the computer is helping rather than trying to take their job.
So the aspiring general manager of the future needs to take revenue management as a specialist subject really seriously.
Absolutely.
Make sure they embrace it and understand it.
Absolutely.
And all of us are excited but petrified at AI taking our lives over, so watch this space. Thank you very much for that, Susan. Andrew, can we just ask you a little bit about refurbishment, upgrading and repositioning? How do you justify continuing to put money back into the business, and what happens if you don't?
Good timing with my budget presentation to my owners, trying to convince them to do refurbishment. Depends on lots of things, obviously. I think, and it depends where you are, it depends on your competitors. Our situation with Grosvenor House Suites, which is an all-suite product, and has been in its current form for about 12 years now, with the new supply that's coming into the market, the refurbishments that are going on in the area up and down Park Lane, I think should make it fairly compelling that something needs to be done in terms of refurb, to be confirmed yet what we're going to do. Interesting seeing the slide earlier from a gentleman from BDO about interest rate, return, EBITDA percentage, etc. And if an owner or an investor can get a much more significant return from an interest rate now than they can from EBITDA, then why would they spend 10, 20, 50, 100 million on a refurb project, which is a fair point. I think it also depends a bit on the original build quality, and definitely how well it's been maintained. And I'm sure we've all been in properties where some of our predecessors maybe haven't managed the preventative maintenance as much as we would like. But I think that really matters, and I think that determines how long a property can go without refurbishment. I know some of the branded companies are fairly disciplined on a fixed period of time for when they would start to refurb, certainly in terms of FF&E refresh. Depends a bit on your design as well, how timeless is the design. But I think if you're maintaining the product over time and the original build quality is good, you'll be able to get a lot longer out of the property than some other ones.
So would David Bowie have made a good hotel owner, do you think, in his desire to keep reinventing himself every 4 or 5 years?
No comment.
Okay, well, it's an academic point now, bless his soul. Kate, can we come back to you? I've got a very loaded question for you here. How do you prepare for a change in government whilst remaining neutral?
It's really easy because I think that the perception out there is probably that I'm very focused on government. I do a lot of work with the governing party, and then suddenly you look as though you're running towards a general election and you have to switch tack and talk to the Labour Party. In actual fact, if you want to get change through at Westminster, you've got to be talking to all parties equally in any case. So I've been working really closely with the Labour Party and all of the front benchers throughout the COVID period and continue to do that. So it's about talking to them about the areas of change we might want. Good example would be, we've been talking to this government about business rates reform. It's not surprising, therefore, that the Labour Party have picked that up and put it into their manifesto already. Ditto with apprenticeship levy reform. We've been talking to them. So my neutrality is about being even-handed throughout the entire 5-year period of a government or a government in waiting, and just having those conversations and the level of conversation.
When are you publishing your diaries? They make fascinating reading.
When I step down or when I'm called before the COVID inquiry, whichever comes soonest. I have all my diaries from COVID. We are even-handed. We work with them. We work closely with them. And the other final point is that ministers make decisions and set objectives. Civil servants do the detail about how do you implement that in practice. Civil servants don't change. So all those relationships, the contact building, the engagement that we've done on the breadth of issues, not the sharp, pointy, gritty ones, but things like inclusivity, accessibility, employment, the work we're doing with DWP on sector-based work academies, recruitment of the homeless, the ex-veterans, ex-offenders, all of that just continues because there's a vast suite of civil servants taking that forward.
Very interesting. Susan, data, it's a big subject. How do you use data? What interest does it hold for you in your business?
I think it is a huge subject, as you say. It's critical, and I was very interested in all of the hot stats data earlier. I think data is it's so huge that it can be misunderstood. There's a lot of great things that can come out of data, and there's a lot of absolute terrible things that can come out of data as well. I read an article recently that compared it to oil, but I prefer the analogy of sugar, and that in its raw state, it's really quite boring and you can't really do an awful lot with it. But if you refine it, you can make cakes and sweets and all sorts of great things that people want to get involved with. But if you have too much of them or you mistreat them, then you can make yourself ill. And I think data is just like that. You have to work with it, you have to refine it, you have to really put it into quite clear plans, structures of what you're going to do with it, because otherwise it can just blow your mind. And it can cause you to go down rabbit holes, it can set you off in the wrong direction. We all know that there's a whole economy being driven around the sale and distribution and misuse of data. So it is, I think, critical to all of our everyday lives, not just our work environment. But it has to be managed with so much care.
And are you a TrevPar queen or an ARR princess? What are the acronyms that matter in your life?
All of them matter in our lives, in my life. I think it depends on the hotel, to be honest. I think it depends on... it was interesting, again, to hear earlier that IHG have changed their terminology in a different region. I can't remember which one, but... and that Hilton are looking at that too. Our industry still uses ADRs and occupancy, and our investors look at those figures. But in a lot of our more complex businesses, TrevPar has to be the way to look at it. In a smaller hotel, a select service hotel, actually looking at TrevPar can dilute the actual message because the food and beverage part might be less profitable, etc. So I really think as an industry, we're kind of stuck where we are. And so if the big boys start changing some of that to look at more profitability, I think that would be great because the profit bit, as we saw earlier, that's the bit that's been eroded. And we're currently having to put our prices up massively in order to stand still from a profit perspective. So I think anything that as an industry we can change to be looking at the bottom line more than the top line has to be a way forward.
Thank you very much. Andrew, can I just ask you just to share a little bit about international exposure and how relevant that is to building your skills? Because you've got one heck of a CV from Belfast to Huddersfield to Albania to Park Lane. Not the most obvious route, ladies and gentlemen.
Just like to mix things up a bit, Robin. Yeah.
Variety's the spice of life.
Absolutely. I've had a great time living in all these places. No, not the obvious route. I think I'd probably always wanted a little bit of adventure. Certainly got that. What does it teach you? I think it makes you culturally very aware, which is great for your team and great for your guests. That's what I find now, because a lot of my team seem to have been in the places that I've worked. I liked not just visiting places, but living there. That gets you under the skin of a place a lot more. So I think being able to relate to people, like I say, especially team and guests, is a real advantage, and being able to make a connection with people quickly. I think operationally you learn a huge amount in so many different types of properties and different cultures and different ownership situations. You learn to anticipate what trouble's coming around the corner, which is quite handy in the next place. So for me, it's been fantastic, actually, and I think very enriching in my experience.
So any advice for young hoteliers? Travel, travel, travel. Get your experience.
Go for it. Just go for it. The view I took, I mean, when I first went overseas was have a go, and if it doesn't work, just come back. There's no harm in trying. And I just went from there. So yeah, I would, if you've got any kind of an inkling for it, just go for it.
Thank you. There's a bit of movement, Joanne, in terms of guidebooks. It looks like Michelin are moving into the AA space, which could cause a little bit of a furore. Do people really listen to TripAdvisor anymore? What are your thoughts about how we get measured?
I think if Michelin's move into keys is interesting, very interesting. Not one that I think too many people anticipated. And how that plays out, I think it's a bit early to say. I think if I was reading a report last week that was Cultivating Luxury, pulled together by Altian on behalf of POB Hotels. And that had that 82% of affluent through to ultra net high worth respondents felt that food and beverage was absolutely key to their leisure. And so Michelin have held that space for an awfully long time. And I guess it does make sense that they may move into keys. As an operator, we all know that Michelin are particularly mysterious, shall we say, about who gets a star, who doesn't, why, and why they don't. And it will be fascinating to see if they continue that through into the hotel space. The amount of pressure that comes from Michelin to get a star, and we've all known of chefs who have been broken when they've lost one. How does that translate into the room attendant? And how much pressure will that bring? So I think it's going to be a fascinating one to watch. I think the AA probably has held the space globally for over 100 years in terms of defining standards. And I know that recently, Peter Hancock sat just there, has been chairing a piece of work that they are doing with Visit England to look at standards. And I think one thing that has really changed a lot during COVID has been what we value in a hotel. AI is everywhere, from revenue management to check-in to food waste, absolutely everywhere. But how do you balance that with the growing experiential demand and a very tight labor market? And so reviewing our standards and defining what actually makes a five-star hotel in terms of product, but also in terms of experience, I think is going to be quite a conundrum. And I look forward to the new standards that come out from there. I think they would due an update. But TripAdvisor, and to be fair, Google reviews and the OTA sites are equally important. Our guests will always want to have their say and have it vocally and share. And I think the social reviews are here to stay. I think when you're looking at all of those products, it's just like marketing. You've just got to decide what your guests want, who they think is important when they're validating their decision, and make sure that you're well represented in whichever of those it happens to be. I'm not sure that gives you a maybe sitting on the fence answer, but I think it really does depend on your property and your guests.
They all have their place.
They do.
Historically, the AA have always taken a conciliatory view. They would do a review and then tell you why you hadn't got top marks and what you needed to do in order to get those good marks. We won't get that from Michelin. It'll be much more
don't think so.
Subjective. Very interesting what you say there. Thank you very much. Kate, you arrived as a gift from God. With
30 years in the making.
With a great sense of awareness that COVID was about to happen. And we, as an industry, ineffectively been saying, we need one voice, we've got to have one voice, where's the one voice going to come from? And you popped up as if by magic. It's fascinating. Tell us about that journey and who inspired you to take... There's a compliment in here, by the way.
That's quite all right.
Who inspired you and who gave you that roadmap?
I think I gave myself the roadmap. As I say, it sort of, yes, I appeared as a gift from God, as if it's overnight. I had been working in the sector for 30 years, and so therefore you sit in the round and you look at what is needed and you look at all these voices. And then it's about 10 years ago I took over as chief executive of a small trade association called ALMR that was just looking after pubs and bars and companies that had fewer than 50 sites. And it was really that realization that the industry was going to change phenomenally and was in the process of changing. The food and the casual dining revolution that was already coming through that meant that pubs, if you look at that 120,000 figure of licensed hospitality that there was at the time, 60,000 of those were pubs. and it's been declining ever since. And so you look at the way it's changing, you look at changing customer behaviour, and you realise that if you're going to have an effective trade body, you've got to broaden it out. So 60,000 pubs and casual dining restaurants. I think at the time there were about 10, 15,000 hotels in the UK, and then when I got given the role of being chief executive at ALMR, I'd previously done the strategy direction of the roadmap of we're going to have to broaden out, we're going to have to go and get everybody together and bring together eating and drinking out. So I brought together eating and drinking out. It was logical then to look at, let's bring hospitality as a whole together to be able to make sure that we can march through the gates of Downing Street was the objective. And who inspired me? I had some really inspiring operators who were on the boards of both ALMR, which I was chief exec of, and that was my strategy to create one voice, and then BHA on the other side of the fence. And the strategy was a sort of, in 2015, it was a 5-year strategy, and we delivered it within 3, really, to get that merger. And then from the point of merger, a 5-year strategy to get hospitality recognised as one of the 6, 7 organisations from the B7 that were going through the gates of Downing Street. Again, COVID accelerated that, but we did it in 2.5 years.
Well, all credit to you, and thank you for holding our hand through what has been the most traumatic period of time.
I don't think we're through it yet, so I'll continue to hold hands. I'm not going anywhere.
And I'm in peak perfect condition, as you can see, Kate, so I'm there to lean on. I'd like to open up to the panel just the question of education and development of our people. This is probably at the stage where it's more important than ever. Perhaps, Joanne, would you take that one first, and then perhaps we can ask Susan and Andrew to comment?
It absolutely is more important than ever. I mean, it's never not been important, to be fair, but if you look at how our talent has changed in the last little while, you know, the slides previous are saying that we are in this talent war, and we know it and we feel it, and we have been for some time. I think it is imperative that you grow your own talent. We've had to recruit in places that we wouldn't have looked before. We've had to get very creative, and people have come with alternative skills, shall we say, and we've had to try and help those people fit in and become valuable parts of our profession. And so I think it is more critical than ever, but I also think it has changed. And I think if I look back to when I was learning the ropes, there was a development program and I needed to fit into that program. That's what it was, and you slotted in. That has completely changed. And in the same way that our guests want a bespoke experience, I think our team want bespoke L&D. And so whether it's days like this or apprenticeships or graduate programs, or even we give each of our team £150 a year for them to learn something new. It could be yoga, it could be a new language, it could be anything. But I think you have to change the way we train and develop to make it perfectly well-formed for each individual.
It's very interesting. Become a stakeholder in their career.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Andrew, do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I was thinking about it with my team. Definitely, we've got to develop our own people, and I say to my teams that, certainly my department heads, you're only as good as your team is. So it's totally in your interest to develop your people so that you can get done what you need to get done. But I think there's a broader issue, not just the numbers of people available, the skills that they have, but general life skills have changed. The ability to get to work on time, put your uniform on, turn out the way you're meant to turn out, attitude, positivity, resilience when things get a little bit difficult. You hear so many stories about people, I've got people in my place, new starts, who go for a break at lunchtime and don't come back. You think, what's happened? So people, whether it's the combination of the pandemic experience, Brexit for sure, and everything associated with those, but I think there's less people with what a lot of us would call basic life skills available. So that's definitely a challenge. The point about developing your own, for sure. And just one last one I was thinking about, not just structured learning, but learning by projects, learning by doing, I think is very valuable. And I always point that out to my team as well. You don't have to go on a course. Do this project and you're going to learn a huge amount. And so giving people opportunity, I think, is a big thing. And I've always appreciated, I think we all have, you want somebody to give you an opportunity. Take a chance on me, and I'll show you what I can do.
Susan, you've got the unenviable task of taking 1 minute and 28 seconds to answer or give your point on this particular subject. Are you happy to accept that?
Absolutely, challenge accepted. I echo everything that has been said so far. I think Jane mentioned it earlier, this is the people industry. Always has been, always will be. No matter how much AI comes into it, the guests come predominantly for that experience. And we have to adapt our ways of engaging our people and making sure that they see that this is a great industry to be part of. And that's something that we have struggled with for years and years. We've been talking about attracting people to our industry for 20 years plus, for all of the reasons aforementioned. But it is a great industry, and we have to keep the focus on our people and making sure that the next generation do get that work ethic, but want to come and be part of this. And I think that's huge. My background is HR. I came up the ranks in HR, and I think to have people at the heads of our industry is hugely telling about our industry.
Essential.
Can I just do a shameless 30-second plug? And I'll just be 30 seconds. We've never been in a better position to do this and take it forward, because we have, for the first time, a complete roadmap from entry-level common induction standards. We're going to bring it forward next year, a digital skills passport which sets common standards for training that will be free to all the SMEs in the sector, so every young person in our sector will get a basic level of training. And we were also plotting through how to go from that level right the way through to level 7. We've never had that for all skills, all parts of the industry and all subsectors. And just take a look at my Twitter feed from last night and see what we're doing to promote careers at the heart of government at number 10. You've got 2 young people who are going to represent the UK at the World Young Chef, Young Waiter Championships, come from the Grove in Narberth. They were cooking at number 10 last night. So we are taking it further forward. I've taken 50 seconds, sorry.
Peter, thank you very much. Can I just ask everyone to show your appreciation for the panel? Thank you.